I bet you'll never believe me when I tell you that there is a contrast plus painted green camouflage tank in my hand just here. See? You'd never guess. Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another range review video, and today we are taking a look at the new Astra Militarum stuff. Yes, we have Lord Castellan Ursula Creed, we have the big man, the big dog, the big horse himself, Lord Solar Leontus, we have the heavy weapons squad, we have the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. This is the second time his namesake has appeared on the channel in January alone. Yes, Games Workshop have sent me all of the new Astra Militarum stuff. Well, I guess it's the new Astra Militarum stuff because it's all new, but we've already had the army set. This is the new Astra Militarum stuff that we haven't yet had in our hands just yet. So a massive thank you to them because I got to paint another amazing character on a horse. Yes. This man. I'm slowly coming around to painting cavalry. It's not something I used to enjoy, but I'm starting to really like it. It helps, of course, that the models are absolutely spectacular. I'm, of course, speaking about Eternus, Blade of the First Prince, and Lord Solar Leontus himself. They're just absolutely cracking, and I cannot wait to show you the video on how to paint him, because it was a lot of fun. For me, at least. And I hope you'll find it just as much fun. So yes, Games Workshop have sent me all of this stuff nice and early to review, build and paint up for all of you. So that is exactly what we are going to be doing this week. This video, of course, will be looking at all of the sprues, how it goes together and all of that good stuff, as I'm sure you are totally used to by now. And the Land Raider scale, of course, makes another epic return at the end of this video. But without further ado, let's just jump in, shall we? Let's get those time lapses on the go. Let's have a look at those plastic sprues. Let's jump in to the new Astra Militarum. Okay, I think you guys know me well enough by now that you know which one I'm going to start with, right? It's the it's the Lord Solar Leontus, because of course it is. Look at this guy. Holy Jesus. What an absolutely incredible bit of kit this guy is. I'm in love. So, what we're going to do, we're going to pop him to one side and we're going to show you what you get in the box. Inside the box, you get one instruction manual. You get an 80mm round base. I think. We'll find out in just a second. And you also get these two sprues, although technically they are three sort of quarter-sized sprues, which is very, very cool. Inside a proper sort of sized box, which is awesome, just as he needs to have the impact of the Lord Solar himself. So let's have a quick look inside that instruction manual first, because we saw on the back it said variant, and I think that's just the face, but I want to know if there's any more that we can do here. So opening it up, here we go. So what do you get? You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. Pages of instructions. Now our variants, as far as I can see, yes, we have only got the one, which is a face variant, and it is the difference between him shouting and him looking serious. I suspect we're going to go for a serious looking gentleman because, you know, it's pretty cool. So, looking at it then, it seems to be a reasonably straightforward build looking at things. We have approximately 36 components, which is really cool. It's not too many components. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to say about this. We've discovered the one variant, and it seems to be laid out in a really nice way. Time will tell as to whether or not attaching the horse to this base is going to be easy, although we do have 2 studs here, so yes, it probably is going to be easy. Initially I thought we didn't have any. Right, so instruction manual done. Let's have a look, shall we, at the sprues. So starting with this one, how is it laid out? Well, firstly I'm going to look down here at these armor panels, and we can see that they are attached by the outside areas. That's where we have our sprued connections, so those will be nice and easy to smooth down, although do just watch out for gouging, particularly around here, because that's a front-facing area. So you just want to make sure that we're paying attention when we do this bit. It does look to me like our seam on our armor panels does kind of cut off halfway through. So if you look carefully here, you see that this is kind of sculpted detail, and that's where it's intended to end, but here the seam will carry on onto both this section of the front part of the armor plate on the horse, and just down here as well. They're very small little seams, but you will want to watch out for that, so make sure you've got plenty of glue, or if you feel like it, some green stuff to fill that in if there is indeed a gap when it comes to it. You want to be very careful around the reins, because you don't want to sort of clip sort of around here first, because if you clip sort of there, you may end up snapping this rein, because that's already a little bit of stress on the plastic. I don't know how well that'll show up on the camera. There's a little bit of stress just there, so adding any kind of hard clips to it will kind of probably get a snap just around about there. So you probably want to clip there, and then there, so don't start with this one or this one. Again, similarly on this rein, we've got super thin plastic, but there doesn't appear to be any stress on there, which is really good. So just clip it here, and then finally on the bit of armor itself. Don't clip there, because you can push the component this way. You might have a little bit of bending or snapping or stress on the plastic just here and here. Now similarly on these leg greaves, I'm assuming those are his leg greaves, yes. We have a connection point again on the outside. It doesn't appear to be on any curved details. Nope, we're all good there. And well, here on the horse, we have a connection point on what would be the nose, but I think that's an armor panel that will, no, it'll get covered up. So you're all good just there. You just want to watch out here on the neck. But on here, again, we've got a little bit of a connection point going on here around the ears. So that would be one of those ones where you want to be careful that you don't do any gouging. Now when it comes to the body of the horse, this front part is going to be covered up by the armor plate, so you should be okay. And same for this, it'll be covered up by the head, and just here it'll be covered up by his bum. But we do have a connection point just there on the outside of the leg, so do be very careful when you're smoothing that down. You want to avoid gouging there. Same on the tail, you want a nice smooth cut, so probably use a mold line remover there in conjunction with your knife. Again, same here. You will want to be careful on the saddle, because sometimes if you leave a little bit too much flash there, it can make it so that the rider doesn't sit properly, but otherwise it's pretty cool. We have one thing to point out here on this will be a raised hoof. This is the one hit the horse's front right leg. You will just want to smooth this down and check for any kind of mold lines, because sometimes, you know, on the bottom of hooves, like for this one here, it won't matter so much because that's a downward facing detail, but this one is facing right up. So if you don't smooth that down, it will be noticeable when people turn the model that way, away from him facing. Otherwise, this is a pretty cool sprue. I should also mention this component here. We've got an outward facing area just here, but it is on the back of the leg. So again, same thing as this hoof over here. You will just want to be careful on these horses bits, so that way you can get nice smooth connection points, or nice smooth down connection points. So again, use your mold line remover and your knife in conjunction. You want to try and avoid the gouging. I realized we didn't check if this was an 80mm base. Is it an 80mm base? It is an 80mm base. There we go. So, looking at this sprue then, typically I would snap this, but right now I can't be bothered. So we're going to start over here. And we've got another bit of kind of Lord Solar Leontus's armor. In fact, maybe these, okay, those were the horse's leg plates. And these are his leg plates, because you can see they're cut off just around here. And that'll be where the stirrups go. So they'll just slot in on this leg, for example, just there. But looking at this sprue in detail, if we have a quick look at those faces. Oh, I really do like the serious face. And both of the heads are attached to the sprue at the neck, which is really, really good. They're not attached on the side of the helmet or anything like that. And they're not attached on the top either, to make that kind of gluing the top of the headpiece on a bit tricky. That's not happening here. We've got this on the neck. Now here on the pistol, we have our connection points on the smooth details. Again, on the outside, it's not overlapping around any corners, making it too difficult. And a really good point of order here is that the sword does not have connection points on the blades. So big win just there. The terrain pieces are as they are. So these one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. There's a lot of terrain there. It's probably quite an intensive bit for the base, but the base is quite an impressive part of this model. We have a really nice breastplate all in one piece. Then we have our chest plate. That is going to be the back of the torso is assembled in such a way that you should be able to hide any potential gouging that you might have around here, because you know that this will glue onto the front, for example, and they've got the cape and all that kind of thing. And speaking of the cape, this is where we have one little problem, one little criticism to point out, is that we have connection points on the curled smooth side of this cape. You see how it curls around. So that's just one of those points of order where going for a straight cut to smooth it down is something you want to avoid, so you don't kind of get this weird sort of flat thing on the curved side. It's not on the kind of outward facing where he's looking, it's on the opposite side of this. But again, just be really careful when you're doing that bit. One thing I would just point out is that when you are assembling the sort of sun part of the helmet onto his head, just you be very sparing with the glue, because if you have too much, it'll just splurt out the sides and it might kind of come onto the face itself, and you really don't want that to happen. Now the legs generally are in pretty good shape. However, we do have connection points on the front of the smooth trousers. So there we go. That's our last point of order, just to point out. Last point of order, just to point out. How many times can you say point in one video? Many. But this is all in all a pretty good sprue. It's looking good for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to build him on the time lapse starting now. So Lord Solar Leontus all built up. This is an absolutely fantastic looking model. Cannot wait to get some paint on him. Right, we're going to move on now to our next character, and that is of course Lord Castellan Ursula Creed. So again, we've got nothing in the box. Well, we have got stuff in the box. What you have got in the box is a single sprue. A 32mm base, so it's not particularly impactful on the tabletop, and of course we have a instruction manual. Now let's have a look inside that instruction manual, because we do have options with which to build. So looking in here, as you can see, we get two in the central pages. We get two variants. We've got a stick and a pair of binoculars, and a helmet and a non-helmeted option. Although of course you could build binoculars and non-helmet, or stick and helmet. You could do whatever you like, I suppose. But you get 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of instructions, and the kit comprises of 18 components, roughly, give or take. It's a nice and simple little model to build, and there you go. Really awesome. She's a great model for Cadian armies, trust me. So, as mentioned, we get our... I'm pretty certain this is a 32mm base. Let me just make sure. Where does it say? Yep, a 32mm base. Right, let's look at the sprue, shall we? So, upon first inspection, it seems pretty good. So, we'll start with the terrain. The terrain is, you know, as you would expect, connected at various different intervals. It doesn't really matter because you can smooth it out, or you can just use kind of any kind of flash as part of the terrain. It could look quite natural at times, unless you've got something really smooth like this piece of rebar just here and here. So you just want to be a little bit careful around there, smoothing those out. You don't want to snap that off, for example. We do have some slightly fiddly details like the rope here on this banner, but thankfully that is not connected to the sprue, so clip away however you please. The smallest components are probably the holsters here and here, so you will just have to be a little bit careful, but they're not spindly either, so they'll clip out quite nicely. One thing to probably bear in mind here is this kind of the epaulets of the jacket. You probably want to clip it just there first, followed by that one, because if you clip that one you could put some stress on this kind of circular part and you might snap it if you clip too vigorously. We have two separate heads, so we don't have to glue a helmet to a head, which is good. So it means we're not going to run the risk of splodging up the details with glue, which is really good. And we have a second set of epaulets here, so maybe that's part of the variants that we build depending on which loadout you give her. The jacket here is connected at the edges, which is really good. It's not on the kind of smooth parts of the jacket. We do have some connection points here on the smooth parts of the jacket just there, but that one is a seam, so that's where part of the jacket will go. So this one's okay, but this one you will just have to be a little bit careful about smoothing out. And one thing to point out as a pip off, deducting points here, is that this helmet has its connecting point on the top of the helmet. This is one that goes on the base, not on her head, but it goes on the top of the helmet, so you just want to be careful smoothing that down so you don't gouge it too much. This is a point of profit here. This is a good point here that both of the heads are connected by the neck, so that's good. But the other point to deduct is for the blade here, where we have our connection point on the back of the sword. So just be very careful that you get that nice and smooth rather than gouging it and getting that kind of weird bendiness at the end of swords that you can get sometimes. We also have connection points here on the jacket itself, which will be a little bit tricky to mold line remove at times because of all the folds, but just be careful and take either the back of your knife or a mold line remover to it. Same thing on this seam of the jacket. We've got the connection point in the bit that's actually going to glue onto the other bit, so that's okay, but we do have it just there, so this one kind of half and half bits to look out for. The chest plate here is in pretty good nick. It's just on the outside, which is always good. And yeah, otherwise this is a pretty good sprue. I really like this, so we're just going to jump in and start building it. Shouldn't be too hard. It's just a single character miniature on a 32mm base, so it should take us no time at all when we hit the time-lapse button now. So with Ursula Creed all built up, what we're now going to do is we're going to move on to, drumroll please, the heavy weapons squad. We are getting to the Rogal Dorn, don't you worry. Let's get this one out of the way first, shall we? So we have the new heavy weapons squad and the box is open because what we get inside is an instruction manual. We also get a transfer sheet. We get 2 sprues and we get 3, 1, 2, 3, I want to say 50mm bases. 50mm bases. Now that's interesting because the new Cadians and stuff, they're bigger models than the old ones. But these are on smaller bases, because the old ones were on 60mm bases. These are 50mm bases. So that's very cool. Bigger models on smaller bases means a lot kind of more succinct as a model. It's less of that negative space all the way around. Now, there's a ton of options in here, and we're just going to explore them all by looking in the instruction manual first. So within it, it starts off by going, hey look, here's 7 heads, and you get 3 interchangeable parts. These are your kind of the weapon bracings. Now on the 3 kind of emplaced guns, the heavy bolter, the autocannon, and the las cannon, it goes at the back here, and then they've got another kickstand at the front. But on the missile launcher and the mortar, you kind of it's just that. There's no kind of kickstand on that, because it's already acting as a kickstand. That's very interesting. So, how does this, well, there we go. So, to kick things off, as you can see, it shows you how to build all 3 of the kind of emplaced guns just there. So we've got the las cannon, autocannon, and a heavy bolter. For those people who are new to Warhammer 40,000, it doesn't tell you what each one is. There's no kind of, this is a las cannon type thing. On the back here, if you know your rules, you can figure it out. So 1 being a autocannon, 2 shot, strength 7, -1, 2 damage. But if you don't know that stuff, this one's a las cannon, this one's an autocannon, this one's a heavy bolter. But so you start off by building the guns that you want. You then build 3 of your gunners here, so 1 on both knees and 1 on either knee. So all 3 are going to be individual gunners, which is very, very cool. And you get your handles, pistol grips. You then have your options here. So 1 and 2. I think one of these is to build a sergeant. Yeah, so if you're going to make this into a heavy weapons squad, you would make your sergeant out of this. If you're going to make it as kind of an attachment to your to one of your kind of Cadian shock troops, not shock troops, to one of your infantry squads, you wouldn't put the sergeant here unless you really wanted to. So there's your first. By the looks of things, this is telling you how to build your first gun. So you build all 3 guns, all 3 of the gunners, and then you have 1 or 2 different options for the gunner's mate, which it tells you how to build. And then you attach everything together and pop it on the base. You then have your green option if you're going to do a heavy weapon, missile launcher here. And you have your next options here if you're going to build a mortar. There you go. This doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Okay, no, it does make sense once you see the whole thing. So it gives you 3 different moments of building the thing. However, it kind of, I see what it does. So build all 3 of the turret weapons. Then here's the options if you want to build it as a missile launcher. Here's the options if you want to build it as a mortar. Here's your second option for sergeant/gunner's mate, and your third option for sergeant/gunner's mate / mortar. There we go. That kind of makes sense. As well as a Voxcaster, just there, which is cool. And then we have our last thing for assembly. So it's just one of those things where I think eventually you'll come out with all of the components, but you just need to kind of be careful and make sure you follow instructions closely before you kind of get brave doing things off-piste. Very interesting. Right, let's have a look at the sprues, because we have 2, just the 2 sprues. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they've done this. So let's start with this one here. Ooh, okay, so this seems like a mostly weapons sprue. In fact, it is pretty much all weapons. We've got a couple of crew members just down here. And I think these are the mortar plates that the mortar sits on. Yep. There we go. Right, so each one... So we have our 1, 2, and I'm guessing the third one is over there. Yeah, third, which we'll get to in a second. Kind of the carrying out of the part of the tripod. So by the looks of things, you're only gonna get 3 things that require a tripod. I think if you're clever with bits, you might be able to get multiple missile launchers, but you're not going to have a wealth of leftover bits to build functioning weapons by the looks of things. I think these are components 6 and 7. So you can get some whole heavy bolters, just none of these kind of kickstand things that go with them in order to make it a whole piece. Our auto cannons, I think, are quite similar. I think they directly go onto the kickstand area. Interesting. Okay, so loads of different, it's a very compatible kit. There's lots of different options here, but I think you will only get, I think you could probably stretch it to get 3 turret weapons and 3 missile launchers maybe, but I can't see any missile launchers on here, so they must be on the other kit. But there we go. If you've got spare bodies lying around, for example, that might be what you can do. But in terms of layout on the sprue, which is what we usually look at these things for just for a moment, all of the guns seem to be quite simply attached here. We've got them on smooth surfaces on these heavy bolter casings. Same here on what I'm assuming goes with the autocannon, because these are components 14 and these are components 13. These are components 6 and these are components 7. These are components 11 and 11. So it stands to reason that there's 12, except we know with the las cannon it plugs straight into the kickstand area as well. The bodies have at least one connection point on the sole of the boot on all 4 of these legs, or 5 of these legs, but then they have one on the bottom. So you'll just want to be watching out for that little area to make sure you get a nice and smooth cut when you're getting it off the sprue and you're smoothing down that detail. We've got connection points quite often with these Astra Militarum kits, or at least with the troops and things, where it's on the arm, on the actual shirt arm, for example, just here, as you can see, component 51. So you do just want to have a knife and a mold line on standby in order to make sure you get that nice smooth surface across all of those bits. We have a helmet, well, a head here, which is attached to the neck. Same here, attached to the neck. Big plus, really like to see that. And our torso is connected underneath the belt and on the shoulders. We've seen this before. So you want to be careful around those shoulders so that you get a nice smooth join with the back of the models. We've got some nice backpacks, lots of lovely detailing on there, which has got connection points on the fabric points, which is a little bit kind of tricky. But nothing we haven't been able to handle before here at Warhipster Towers, or indeed you guys at home. So, sprue number 1 out of the way. It's interesting because these are very much what I would call 2D sprues. All of the kind of parts are, it's quite a flat sprue. There's not a lot rising out, or kind of things that kind of sit as like 2 halves of a whole. If you see what I mean? I mean, the legs are 2 halves of a whole set of pair of legs, but anyway, quite 2D in nature, which should make for a quite easy mold lining experience. But the same things seem to be present here. We do have a lot of connection points for the arms, and these are on the shoulder pads themselves, and these are actually on the smooth part rather than kind of on the elbow, which, you know, take it or leave it. So sometimes it's fine to have it on the elbow and not on the short kind of smooth shoulder. That makes it for a little bit tricky in terms of smoothing it down. So again, just make sure you have your knife and try not to gouge. Backpacks, it's the same deal. Weapons seem to be a similar deal. These are the kind of curved bits of the missile launcher though. So you've got your connection points on the outside rather than on kind of either end, which would have been really nice to see, but we've got it on the actual tube of the launcher. Same over here with the mortars as well. So do just watch out for that section. But yeah, I think it's a fairly basic sprue. There's lots and lots of components, as you can see, across 2 sprues. And it looks in pretty good nick, but we shall find out now when we build the heavy weapon squad on our time lapse, starting now. So our heavy weapons are now all built. I think they look pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our final kit. And that is, of course, the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. Comes in a big A4 size box, as you should expect, because this is a big boy. Behold. What do you get in the box, I hear you cry? Well, it's the things that you expect, of course. We have a transfer sheet. This is one of the cool Astra Militarum transfer sheets. However, this is the vehicle transfer sheet. I think this is a new one. I've not seen this one before, which is very, very cool. I really like this. Frostbite 4. That's good. Steel Blizzard. I'm a big fan of these. I think this is new. I'm pretty certain it is. Viewers at home, let me know in the comments. Right. You get your Astra Militarum vehicle transfer sheet. You get a hefty instruction manual. And you get not one, not two, but 3 sprues of plastic. Big A4 sprues of plastic. My goodness me. They look amazing. Now later on, once we've built it, we'll compare it in size to, say, the Hector Land Fortress, just to see how big it is. But that right there looks pretty chunk if we just pop a heavy weapons team alongside it, as you can see. So let's have a quick look inside that instruction manual. What we get, I know this to be a fact, is we get a coaxial heavy stubber. We get a, well, that's a pintle mounted heavy stubber. We get 2 sponson weapons. These can be heavy bolters or multi-melters. In here at the front, we get 2 multi-melters or heavy stubbers. And then there is a choice of 2 weapons. The Castigator or Punisher cannon or something like that. There's a Punisher cannon, there's a big minigun there, and then we get the big Oppressor cannon with a coaxial auto cannon, or there's the twin battle cannon as well. I'm probably going to build this because I think it looks cooler. It looks more tanky. And we don't get a base, obviously, because it is vehicle. But we get the option for closed turrets here. We get the option for 2 crew members. We also get the option for an officer poking his head out. I don't know if we get a sword so that we can drive ourselves closer to hit them with our sword. But what we get is we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 pages of instructions. We get the options for armored tracks as well, which we're almost definitely going to do because it just makes these guys super good. But you could build it without, I suppose, if you didn't want to put the armored tracks on, but they're 5 points. So why wouldn't you? Now, just something I want to check looking in the instructions is whether or not magnetizing is going to be something, because I know that a lot of you folks out there like to do that. So let's have a look, shall we? So what we get is we get some doors on the sides, and those are sculpted details. We don't glue them in. And I believe over the top of the doors is where you would glue the sponsons. Yes. So I think you can take it without sponsons, so you could drill and seat a magnet in there if the plastic is thick enough, but I don't know if it is. You could perhaps put a really strong magnet on the inside in order to magnetize the sponsons on and off if you want to. On the front of the vehicle is where you get your extra options. You get a little gap there, so feasibly you can drop a magnet in there, but we will not know that until we know whether or not there's any shields or anything that are kind of one use only or anything like that. The pintle mounted heavy stubber could be magnetized quite easily, as we've got a plug here where we could just drop a magnet in there wherever you want to put the heavy stubber, which is really nice. It's very cool. Oh, we get three hole crew options here. Absolute party on top if you wanted to. That's very, very cool. Right, what were we doing? We're looking at magnetizing. That's what we're doing. So we have interchangeable parts. What do we get? So this is component 106 and component 83, and the turrets, the cannons, the actual barrels of the weapons themselves are both individual, as are these shields. So feasibly, magnetizing should be pretty doable. This is where it glues in, so it must be a three-pronged shield that goes into the front. We get a three-pronged kind of slot in order to drop our cannon in, so feasibly magnetization is absolutely doable. However, you won't want to put 3 magnets in there, you probably only need the 1, but you want to be careful when drilling in that central bit, because if you kind of drill too wide, you won't have enough of a seat on the magnet and it'll just drop around and it'll fall out pretty easily. But the main cannon looks to be magnetizable, so let's go and have a look at the sponsons. I should just clarify, I'm not magnetizing, but I like to check this for this kind of thing because it is a question you will all ask, I am sure. On the front, something we again didn't check, but we can see that the Punisher cannon is component 133 and 132 and 134 makes up one of these, and the Demolisher cannon makes up 135 and 136. So those two weapons are completely separate. What we have here is 43 and 43. Okay, so our kind of front mounted things might be a little tricky to magnetize. You might have to do something like actually just magnetize the barrels of the guns themselves, because you only get these 2 components by the looks of things. It says ×2, and I would guess that they've not supplied 4 for that purpose. So that's the only thing that way you would kind of, it's not immediately obvious how to do it, but you would basically just put a magnet on the end, kind of get rid of the peg down here, get rid of the peg on the weapon, put a small magnet there, drop a magnet into the little shield thing, glue that in, and that would be how you could do it. So it is entirely possible by the looks of things. We get some track guards, armored tracks, all of it. Yes, we've already talked about all of this. My goodness me, what a very cool set of instructions. Right, yes, you only get 1 of each sponson housing as well. You would just swap what you put on the front, so component 57 or 59, or 57 or 58 here, you just swap what that puts on the front. So again, magnetizable, but the sponson itself isn't magnetizable. There we go. Well, I mean, there's better magnetizers out there than I who could do it. Now, often when we review these tank-like kits, this isn't tank-like, this is a tank kit. When we review these tank kits, this section of looking at the sprues is generally quite quick because, well, as a tank, it's all kind of in 2D. So all of the kind of pieces, the connection point should be on the outside of all of the components. And you can see this immediately just looking at all of this kind of stuff here. So like doors and panels and tracks, you've got the kind of connection points on the outside of these large square pieces. So it would be strange to see it any other way, but that's fairly consistent with this one. We do have some tiny pieces, and these are all kind of the crew members bits. And we've got these kind of little hooks and things like that, which, you know, for sort of tying rope on, that kind of thing. These are the kind of slightly smaller pieces, but again, we've got the attachment to the sprue on the flat part of it rather than on the rounded part. So that is a huge, well thought out design point on this sprue. Otherwise, yeah, it's just everything's on the outside, and it's a pretty cool little sprue kit on this one. Next one should be broadly similar, except we will have less kind of human parts here. What we have is the other kind of halves of the tracks, and we've got our kind of armored track components on the here, and kind of like the framing, so like that right there will be the bumper, things like that. But again, everything is attached to the sprue via the outside components, outside sections. So again, just chopping these things off, usually quite quick and easy. We do have 1 or 2 things here, components 54 and 39, where you've got connections on the actual rounded part of the component, as you can see just there. So that would be something to just bear in mind when you're smoothing that down, so you don't end up kind of chopping off or kind of gouging it too badly, because you don't want to kind of have a square part on a rounded surface. So that's just something to watch out for. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, all of these are connected around the outside. Even these barrels, we've got a little bit of connection point going on here on the central part of the barrel, but it's right up against the edge, so it shouldn't be too much of a big deal to try and smooth that out. Our final sprue then, here we have it. You always have to expect it when it comes to the barrels of large weapons. They will be in two halves. So when it comes to these kind of sections here on the long smooth parts, so on this component just here and up here, just be very careful when you're smoothing down the bits on the long parts of the barrel, because that's where you can kind of get this weird thing where you want it to look like that, but it can sort of have a little bit of an overlap if you gouge it too much. If you kind of like sink too much in with the knife, so you just want to be very careful when you're doing it. Otherwise, again, these components all appear to be attached to the sprue by the hard edges, which is just fantastic. Got a bit of a rounded feature just here on this component. That's one thing to bear in mind. Same on this one. But otherwise, I mean, this one, it looks like it is, but actually it is still attached at that hard edge, where it'll be nice and soft and easy to just slice through it and thin it down, smooth it down. So with all that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and start building it on our time lapse. I'm going to try and do all of it, but who knows, the battery may not last in the camera. Wish me luck. Here we go in now. So there you have it, folks. All four of the brand new kits built up. They've been primed and, oh, I'm not going to lie to you, they're all painted. Yes, for once, I managed to get all four painted in time for this video. So you know what we're going to do now? We're going to roll the tape and I'm going to talk to you about it. So let's kick things off with Lord Solar Leontus. Here he is, fully painted, looking incredible. And I never thought it would be possible to have an infantry character be the centerpiece model for the Astra Militarum, but here we are. What an incredible miniature. Next up we have the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank here, painted in a camo pattern, a dark camo pattern. I wanted to go as grungy as possible, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. This video is coming very soon. Next up we have Ursula Creed, and from the back you would be forgiven for thinking it was Ursaka himself, but no, we have the breathtaking new Ursula herself. I think she looks amazing, so much character in this tiny little character. And finally we have the heavy weapons team, arguably the most boring of the four kits, but again, I just think these look amazing. A couple of additions here and there, like a Vox operator and a sergeant, make this kit really, really shine. What do you think? Don't they look amazing? That Lord Solar Leontus model is absolutely breathtaking. I think it's fantastic. It might be one of the best that they've ever made, particularly for 40k in general. It's got a lot of Age of Sigmar vibes about it, which just makes me very excited for the future of Warhammer 40,000. So yes, we have 3 brand spanking new miniatures and 1 clever redesign. I really like that the heavy weapons team are bigger models on smaller bases. I think they're just really succinct, really to the point. When you look at them, there's not loads of empty space for, you know, stuff. Because I don't really like cluttering up the bases too much with like tactical rocks and things like that, because it's just kind of, you want your models to feel like they can move a little bit. And I think when there's too much ground stuff, it almost sometimes looks like they're not able to move. That's why it's kind of fine on something like Lord Solar Leontus, because he would take a position on the battlefield and kind of just stand there looking impressive and giving orders and stuff like that. Whereas for your infantry and stuff, like having them standing on loads and loads of barrels and things is just, for me, it's kind of like, well, I just really like these models. I think they look fantastic. The heavy weapons are an appropriate size as well. They're really big. It's really quite cool. Now, we do have to quickly talk about the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank, because there is a square on the undercarriage missing. And I don't really know why. I can see for some people that's going to be a real problem. For me, it's not so much a problem, because I don't really care. I'm never going to really look at the underside of my models. I'm just, you know, and I don't really paint the interiors either, because I'm never going to open up the doors. Not that this one has any doors to open up, you see. But I can see it being quite frustrating for some people who really do like to do that stuff, that this isn't a feature within this kit. That said, you know, is it enough to be a little bit disappointed? Yeah, I think that's fair. But also, I don't really mind myself. But when it comes to grading it, which we will get to in just a moment, I think we do have to bear it in mind. So let's grade it then, shall we? New Astra Militarum kits. Ursula Creed, Lord Solar Leontus, the Heavy Weapons Team, and the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. Where do they fall on the epic, long-awaited Land Raider scale? I mean, let's start with the tank, right? Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. Is it a Land Raider? No. The Land Raider is the best tank of all times. Is the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank a really cool tank, though? Absolutely it is. It's got so much realism in it, which I think is its biggest feature. It looks familiar, I think, which is what kind of is really cool about stuff like the ordnance batteries, the field ordnance batteries, the heavy bombast gun. It just looks like an artillery piece that we might see in historical photos, which is very, very cool. It's just, it's got a lot of kind of current day nostalgia, I think. Looking at it is probably why I think the Rogal Dorn is as cool as it is, particularly with that single turret gun. The double battle cannon, the dual battle cannon I should say, or twin battle cannon, not so much. I don't think that looks quite as cool, and I think it takes away from the real, I think, the joy of the design language involved in creating the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. But that single cannon, not only is it fantastic in-game, it looks brilliant, and I really enjoyed doing the camo pattern on it. I think that was really effective, even if I do say so myself. It went together really nicely. It took a long time because there's a lot of plastic components, but it went together really, really nicely. That said, it is missing that square in the undercarriage, and, well, I don't know whether... I think, putting myself out of it for a moment, that would probably impact the kit itself quite a lot. I think that gives it itself probably about a 6 out of 10. The actual kit itself, the look of it, the ease of painting, how it is on the battlefield, all that stuff, it's way up there. It's like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. But missing that square, I know for a lot of people that's going to be a problem. But as I've already said, for me it's not so much. So that's kind of where I sit on the Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. For the two characters, Lord Solar Leontus and Ursula Creed, they're really, really cool. There's so much character in them and they look fantastic. Even when you put them in amongst other models of a similar size, they really draw the eye, particularly Leontus himself. He is a huge focal point and a real eye catcher on the battlefield. I think he's a must-have for all Astra Militarum armies personally. And I think Ursula Creed is too, for all you Cadian fans out there. She does not get lost in amongst the Cadians, which is really impressive for something that's only on a 32mm base, and sometimes those models can get lost in amongst the chaff. Building them, absolutely fine. Really liked the sprues as well, as I'm sure you figured out by watching the video. So last but not least, we have the heavy weapons team, and it's really intelligently put together kit, and I really liked it. And I think I commented on this in the main section that it's quite a 2D kit on the sprue, which made it building it quite joyful. Just very, very quick and easy to do, and you get so many choices and options in it. Now, the only thing I can see, again, being a little bit of an issue for some people is that realistically you can only get 3 heavy weapons out of it, so you will be left over with a lot of bits. But a lot of you are quite creative, so you will be able to find something that you can do with some of the bits that remain in it. That said, I think you could get 3 standing missile launchers out of it, as well as 3 mounted weapons on the tripod. So I think for the better modelers out there, this is a really cool kit for you. I think for those of us who are kind of used to things like the Space Marine heavy weapons kit, where you can eke out a few more if you've got a few spare bodies, it's a little bit disappointing, but it's a really nice kit. I don't really know where to stand on it, so you know, I really like it, basically. So where does that leave us overall for the new Astra Militarum range? Well, aesthetically, we always go with this. Aesthetically, I think maybe swings it quite a lot for me in these. So I think we should be kind of dial it back a bit in terms of the aesthetic. Figure out the science of the grading here, because aesthetic shouldn't have as much weighting as it does. Because normally if it's aesthetically pleasing, I'm like, yeah, 10 out of 10, baby. Let's go. Now, aesthetically, yes, it's very, very, very high. That's kind of around about a 9 out of 10. Unless you consider that missing square underneath the Rogal Dorn affects the aesthetic. In which case, it's severely impacted. So I think, let's be fair, let's not dance around it too much. I'm going to give this range on the whole, in terms of the building, that was very nice. The missing square, bit of a problem. Not able to get so many components out of the heavy weapons team, bit of a problem. I don't know, I think a 7 out of 10 on average score seems fair for these 4 kits, just because there's quite glaring things in a sea of awesomeness. That's what knocks it down a little bit, but it's not a fair representation, because I think Lord Solar Leontus, 9.5 out of 10. Ursula Creed, 9.5 out of 10. Heavy weapons team, 7 out of 10. Rogal Dorn, that's a hard one to grade. I love it, but the square, 7 out of 10. Okay, let's go for 7.5. I think I might have already said that. It's really late, guys. So anyway, all of that aside, really, really cool. Thank you so much, Games Workshop, for sending this stuff to me. I now have all of the HQs I need to build my Astra Militarum army out and to continue the Grand Crusade project, which I've been quietly painting for a long time now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon for the next one. Happy wargaming, you lovely lot. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these amazing, wonderful people have done. And if you really like this video, or you just want to shoot me some support, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.